Welcome to A Happy Life, a podcast dedicated to providing science-based education and tools for adding more happiness to your life. Hi, everyone. I am Dr. Joshua Swift, professor of psychology at Idaho State University, licensed clinical psychologist, and author of Becoming Happy, a guide to self-care and holistic well-being. On today's episode, we are going to talk about distress tolerance. Many people mistakenly believe that a happy life is one that is free from trials, difficulties, and hassles. But in reality, those things are going to happen to all of us. Instead, happiness comes when we develop tolerance in the presence of the stressors that we will invariably face. But before we discuss these things further, let me just remind you to hit subscribe or follow below so you never miss any of our future episodes. And please share with others. As we think about the word tolerance, words like patience, open-mindedness, or forbearance might come to mind. But what does this word actually mean? Well, in a medical or healthcare context, tolerance refers to the capacity to endure subjection to something without having a reaction. So in terms of a drug, whether it is a medication or common substances like alcohol or caffeine, one is tolerant to that drug when one no longer experiences the effects from it. In terms of a transplant, one is tolerant to the new tissue or organ when the immune system doesn't have a negative reaction to it. And today, we are talking about distress tolerance. This refers to the ability to face stressful events in life with little or no negative or adverse reaction. In other words, it is the ability to move on and still be satisfied with life, even when trials, difficulties, or hassles occur. And this is the kind of tolerance that leads to happiness. Today, I will discuss two main approaches for developing distress tolerance. The first is something we can build up ahead of time before we experience the stressful events. It is referred to as resilience. The second are strategies that we can use in the moment when we are facing the difficulties to help us get through the negative emotions more quickly. These are often referred to as coping skills. Okay, so starting with resilience. Resilience refers to our ability to shake off the difficulties that come our way. The American Psychological Association defines it specifically as the process of successfully adapting to difficult or challenging life experiences, especially through mental, emotional, and behavioral flexibility and adjustment to external and internal demands. Now, there's an old parable that I think illustrates the characteristic of resilience well. In this parable, a donkey falls into an old dried up well. The donkey's owner and all of the people in the village hear the donkey braying from the bottom of the well. And after checking it out, they realize that there's no way they can get the donkey out. Now, out of concern that other animals or children might also one day fall into the abandoned well, they decide to fill it up and bury the donkey in the process. So they all get their shovels and start throwing in dirt. At first, when the dirt falls in on the donkey's back, the donkey's confused and it wonders why its owner is giving up on it. But rather than give up as well, the donkey decides that it's going to continue to fight for its life. So each time the dirt falls in on the donkey's back, it shakes it off and stomps it down. And over time, the stomped down dirt starts to pile up, and the donkey rises with it, eventually being able to escape from the well. Through resilience and not giving up, the donkey overcame the trial that it had to face. Now, similarly, we are all going to face difficult times in our lives. We can choose to lay down and let those trials bury us, or like the donkey, we can choose to make the best of our situations. And when we are able to brush off difficulties and continue to move forward with our lives, then we are being resilient. And it is when we develop resilience that we can be happy in life, no matter what type of situations we are in. Now, to date, Several meta-analyses have been conducted examining the relationship between resilience and various mental health outcomes. The most comprehensive of these reviews included data from 60 different studies. The researchers found that trait resilience was negatively correlated with depression, anxiety, and negative affect. In other words, the more resilient one is, the less likely one will experience those concerns. But even more pertinent to the focus of this podcast, resilience showed a strong positive correlation with both life satisfaction and positive affect, such as happiness. In fact, the level of resilience was found to explain over 25% of the variance in how satisfied and happy people were in their lives. And this strong correlation was found both for adults and children. Now, not only does resilience predict life satisfaction and happiness, research has shown that it is a mediator between those two variables. We usually think about these two variables as going hand in hand. When someone experiences a higher level of life satisfaction, they are also usually happier. But this research shows that that is not a guarantee. It depends on how resilient they also are. Someone can be very satisfied with their circumstances right now, but if their resilience is low, they probably will not be very happy. They may see their current positive circumstances as fleeting and recognize that future negative events could take it all away. In contrast, others might not be very satisfied with their current circumstances, but if they are highly resilient, they would likely still be happy. They would see the current negative experiences as temporary and something that they can get through. And so their levels of happiness would not be affected by them. An analogy for this would be someone caught out in the rain. A resilient person might not like being stuck in the rain without an umbrella, so they're really not satisfied with their current situation. But they know it is just temporary, and they will be able to get dry again at some point, and so they remain generally happy. In contrast, a different person who lacks resilience may be walking outside on a beautiful sunny day. They like the sun, and they are satisfied with the current situation, but they are not really happy because they know that the good weather won't last. And one day it could rain on them, and that would make them miserable. So, in thinking about the goal of happiness, you may wonder how resilient you currently are. Well, there are three general ways that we assess one's resilience in the field. The first is through well-validated measures or questions. Maybe you can take a second and think about your response to the following. How quickly do you tend to bounce back after hard times? How long does it take you to recover from a stressful event? And how hard is it for you to get through these difficulties? Now, these questions were all adapted from one of the most widely used resilience measures, the Brief Resilience Scale, which was published by Smith and colleagues in 2008. As you consider your responses to those questions, it is important to remember that there is not a universal standard for the amount of time needed to recover from a stressful event in order to be considered resilient. Instead, it's the perception that one can get through them quickly, whether that be an hour, a day, a week, a month, or a year, depends somewhat on the individual stressor and the individual person. The second method that is often used in research to assess resilience is through a direct experimental manipulation. In this type of study, the researchers expose participants to stressful or challenging situations, and then they watch and see how they would respond. For example, in one study, the researchers asked college students to prepare a video of an impromptu speech that would then be evaluated by their peers. They then measured their cardiovascular response to see how quickly participants' heart rates and blood pressure returned to baseline levels. In another study, participants engaged in an online task that resulted in a digital piggy bank either gaining coins or losing them. They then measured mood fluctuations in response to losing the coins. And in another study that I will talk about later in this episode, children were asked to come up with solutions to common problems. After they came up with the initial solution, the researchers told them that those wouldn't work and asked them to think of a new one. The researchers considered the ability to identify a second option as a sign of resilience. The final method for measuring resilience in the field is to directly assess mental health outcomes after exposure to naturally occurring difficult events. So, for example, in 2023, the high school that my children go to caught on fire during the night. A third of the school was destroyed, and students had to finish the rest of the school year through virtual learning and sharing resources and space with other schools in the city. Now, although this was not an ideal situation for anyone, some students coped fairly well, maintaining their grades, mental health, and well being, and others did not. When these types of variables are maintained or rebound quickly, it is taken as a sign of resilience. One area where this type of research is frequently conducted is childhood chronic disease. In this area, researchers assess psychological health and well being when children learn about or are living with a chronic health condition. While many children cope well in these situations and would be considered resilient, others do not. Now, what is common among these three methods for measuring or assessing resilience is the ability to move on from difficult life circumstances. When something bad happens, do you get stuck in it, or are you able to bounce back and maintain a productive and satisfying life? Now, fortunately, resilience is not considered an inherent trait. Instead, it's thought to be a characteristic or skill that one can develop. Now, most of the research on building resilience has been conducted with children. And in these studies, four different variables have been shown to play a key role in the growing of this positive characteristic. And each of these can also be applied to developing resilience in adults. The first is having a supportive parent. A supportive parent provides a secure base for children as they go out and explore the world. When children know that they have a secure base, they are more willing to take risks and try new things. Then, if those new challenges fail or difficult times come, children can go back to that secure base to receive comfort and support. In this way, they learn that even when things don't go perfectly, they will be okay and they can get through them. Now, as adults, having a similar secure base can also help us develop or maintain our resilience. But we can find our secure base in many other places besides just parents. They can be significant others or friends, and we can have several different supportive relationships. For example, Gallup polls have repeatedly shown that having a close friend at work or a caring manager leads to better employee engagement, increased work productivity, and improved work satisfaction. Now, the second variable that plays a key role in the development of resilience in children is self-esteem. Self-esteem refers to confidence in oneself and one's abilities. Now, given the overlap in definitions, it makes sense that this variable would be highly related to resilience. Unfortunately, self-esteem in children can be difficult to find. Now, fortunately, there are several ways to increase confidence and self-esteem in children. Having supportive parents and supportive friends, as I previously mentioned when talking about resilience, is one. Also, providing them with praise and recognizing strengths is another. Teaching them that they have value and worth that is not based on accomplishments, appearance, or possessions is also important. And then having them practice acceptance and positive thinking helps. Finally, limiting social media is critical. In a study with over 17,000 school aged girls in the US, those who use social media for 10 hours or more a day, which I know sounds like a lot, but the average in the US is 6 hours per day, were 25 percentage points less likely to report that they were confident in themselves compared to those who just use social media for 2 hours per day or less. So, in addition to being helpful for children, all of these strategies can lead to improved self esteem and resilience in adults. The third variable that plays a key role in the development of resilience in children is having the opportunity to engage in challenging experiences. Now, this has to be at the right level. Having an easy life may not prepare children for future difficulties that will come, but neither does having repeated exposure to traumatic events. Instead, challenging experiences at the right level can teach children how to problem solve and push themselves to try new things. They can also teach them that stress and failures are not the end of the world, and they can get up and try again. So, joining a club, participating in a sport or in an academic team, having a part time job, or simply setting weekly goals are all great ways to encourage children to engage in challenging experiences. And this works for adults too. I'm reminded of a recent discussion with one of my graduate students. He shared about a goal that he had to jump in a river by his house every morning for a week. And this was in February when the temperatures were below freezing where we live. And not only did he report some physical benefits from this, such as decreased inflammation, but he reported that it gave him more confidence throughout the rest of his day. Whenever he faced something else that was difficult, he was able to remind himself of this cold plunge in the morning and was able to think, if I can get through that, I can get through anything. The fourth variable that seems to play an important role in the development of resilience is creativity. Creativity of all types helps children gain confidence and improve self esteem, but it can also teach them new ways to look at things and open them up to unique problem solving techniques. In a recently published paper, the researchers described the results of two studies where they tested the effects of creativity on resilience in problem solving in third, fourth, and fifth grade children. So, in the first study, the children were randomized into two groups. In the control group, the children were asked to spend a little bit of time thinking about a special quality that they personally possessed, something that could help them solve any problem. In the experimental group, the children were asked to think about a special quality that someone they knew possessed, something that that person could use to help them solve any problem. The researchers suggested that this thought task induced creativity in the experimental group by having them engage in perspective shifting. Now, the children were then presented with two problems. One that was a standard problem across all of the participants, and one that was personal, that each child came up with on their own. And in trying to solve these problems, children in the control group were told to use their special quality, and children in the experimental group were told to think about advice they would get from their friend. And they found that only half of the students in the control group were able to come up with a solution to the standard problem. And almost none of them could provide a solution to their own personal problem. In contrast, 94% of the students in the experimental group were able to come up with solutions for both the standard and the personal problem. And importantly, judges rated the solutions that were suggested by the children in the experimental group as being much more creative and more useful than the solutions offered by those in the control group. Now, although the students in the intervention group were able to come up with solutions when those in the control group could not, there was an interesting twist to the study. After the children shared the first solution, the researchers told them that it wouldn't work and they needed to come up with a different one. None of the students in either condition could come up with a second option. So the researchers designed a second study. And in that study, instead of just doing a perspective shifting task for a few seconds before trying to solve the problem, the children got to attend a 10-hour perspective shifting creativity class that was spread out over the course of a week. Now, after attending the class, all of the children came up with an initial solution to both a standardized and personal problem. Further, 100% of them proposed a viable second solution to the problems after they were told that their first solutions would not work. The researchers suggested that this was a clear example of resilience. So, in both children and adults, practicing creativity or learning how to think outside the box, particularly when solving problems, can help in developing resilience. So, in summary, resilience is a skill that we can develop through seeking social supports, building self esteem, engaging in challenging tasks, and practicing creativity. And these are all things we can do ahead of time before a difficult situation is faced. But there are also strategies that one can use in the moment when trying life circumstances are already present. I mentioned earlier that these are often referred to as coping strategies. Now, in general, they can be split up into techniques for your mind, techniques for your body, and techniques to create meaning. So, when we face stressful situations, oftentimes we get so caught up in the anxiety that it becomes difficult to think about anything else. This distress can either immobilize us or push us to react in a way that we may not want to. The techniques for the mind help us step out of the thoughts and emotions so we can respond in a more purposeful and value driven manner. These techniques include acceptance, mindfulness, and distraction. With mindfulness and acceptance, we create a space between ourselves and our thoughts and emotions. Instead of dwelling on the things that we cannot control and ruminating on them over and over again, we work on just allowing the situations to be what they are. And we observe the thoughts and feelings that we have associated with them. And regularly engaging in guided mindfulness activities can help us learn how to be mindful when distressing situations come. Now, once we have made the space for allowing an observation, we can then think about the possible actions that we could take to address the difficulties and evaluate the various pros and cons of each one. Now, sometimes the best solution for facing a distressing situation is to just patiently wait. Now, this can be difficult, but occasionally we face problems in life that are completely out of our control. At these times, distracting our mind from the situations can be helpful. To do this, we just engage in activities that we know are going to make us think about other things. Maybe we read a favorite book, or we watch a favorite movie or TV show. Comedies usually help me the most with this. And if I'm stressed about something that I can't do anything about right now, I also like to distract myself by working on a project that is completely under my control, like building something or doing a household chore or finishing a relatively easy or straightforward work assignment. Other distraction techniques can be to do something fun with a family member or friend, volunteer to help someone else in some way, play some games, work on a talent or hobby, and listen to some upbeat music. Now, with all of these, it is important that we use them as a temporary escape from the distress to help us create some mental space. Then, after a period of time, we go back to the difficult situation and see if we can work out plans to address them. And not only do distressing situations affect our thoughts and emotions, they often have an impact on our bodies. And so it can also be helpful to engage in physical coping strategies. The focus of some of these physical activities is also to help us step out of the situations. And one way to do this is to calm our bodies down through the use of temperature. Cold water baths, or even just cold water on our faces, can help us cool our bodies down. And a hot bath or sauna, especially when paired with aromatherapy, can help our bodies relax. Progressive muscle relaxation is also an excellent way to calm our bodies down by teaching us how to relax our muscles. To do progressive muscle relaxation, you start at your limbs, either your hands or your feet, and you squeeze your muscles tight and hold for 5 to 10 seconds, and then release for another 5 to 10 seconds. And after doing this a few times with those muscles, you work your way in or up to the next muscle group, squeezing for 5 to 10 seconds, then releasing for 5 to 10. And you continue to do this until you have worked your way through your entire body. Now, when first starting out, it can often be helpful to have someone guide you through this process. And so I'll post a guided progressive muscle relaxation video on my YouTube channel. Other activities that can help calm your body or provide a physical distraction include exercise, being out in nature, and getting a massage. Now, while some physical activities help us distract or calm our bodies, other physical activities can help us be in a better place to make decisions on how we want to address the distress that we are facing. These include activities to take care of our bodies and keep them healthy, such as eating properly, getting an adequate amount of sleep each night, and taking care of our hygiene and grooming. Distress can often get in the way of our physical upkeep, but if we prioritize these healthy behaviors, it will be easier to face the difficult situations when they do occur. The last coping strategy that I want to mention today is to look for meaning. This can be extremely difficult when all we want is for the distress to end. But instead of focusing on how bad the difficult situations are, take some time to think about what good can possibly come out of them. For those of you who garden, you know that exposure to wind actually helps plants grow stronger. It forces them to grow deeper roots and stronger trunks. And plants that are rarely exposed to wind when young tend to fall over and break more easily when exposed to the elements at a later point. Similarly, adversity can help us grow. So when you face something difficult or challenging, take some time to think about what the situation might be teaching you. What characteristics or abilities can it help you develop? And how might you become a more compassionate person through it? Now, this is kind of a small example, but a couple of weeks back, my family was all set to go on a weekend trip to visit grandparents in a neighboring state. We had woken up early and we got all packed up and were ready to head out. But then, just one block away from our house, we ran over something that caused a flat tire in the back of our car. Now, at first, I was struck with the difficulty. And I was stuck on that, thinking about how horrible the situation was and all of the problems and the delays that it was going to cause us. But while I was changing the tire in the snow, I tried to see it as a growth opportunity and identify some meaning or purpose that could come out of it. I realized that it gave me an opportunity to practice patience. I had been very rushed that morning, trying to get everything all packed up and everyone in the car early. The flat, however, helped me see that I needed to slow down and not worry about my timing on things so much. It also helped me feel more gratitude. I became more grateful for the knowledge I had of how to change a flat, for the tire repair shop that was close by and got us in early so we could finish our trip, for our working car and all of the conveniences that it provides, and for our neighbors, several of whom stopped to see if they could help. It also helped me develop more compassion and understanding for others who face similar situations. Again, this was a small thing, but we can similarly grow from larger difficulties as we seek to find some purpose or meaning from them. Now, as we finish today's episode, I would like to mention that developing distress tolerance does not mean we will never feel sad or anxious or upset. These types of feelings can naturally happen when we face difficult situations, and that is okay. In those exact moments, we may not be happy. And in fact, we may even experience a lot of psychological pain. But as we develop resilience and practice coping strategies, it becomes easier to move past the pain and experience true happiness. We can develop resilience by having a strong support system, building self esteem, purposely challenging ourselves, and practicing creativity. And we can also use coping strategies to get through difficult times by distracting our minds, engaging in acceptance and mindfulness, calming or relaxing our bodies, taking care of our physical selves, and looking for the growth opportunities that can come from the challenges that we face. Well, thank you for joining us today on A Happy Life. I hope you enjoyed the conversation. If you haven't done so already, please hit subscribe or follow below to receive notification for all of our future episodes. And please share with others. Take care until next time.